Hi and welcome to Quirky Books with Katie. Today I'm going to be doing my May wrap-up and June TBR, which can't even believe that it is already almost June. And I actually managed to read quite a few books in the month of May, even though I had a period of about 2 weeks where I almost read nothing at all because of AP tests. But I'm going to get into the books that I read in the month of May. So the first book that I read in the month of May is I Heart You, You Haunt Me by Lisa Schroeder, and this book is told entirely in verse. It is about a girl named Ava, and her boyfriend Jackson has recently died, and she believes that he is haunting her. And I absolutely adore Lisa Schroeder's book The Day Before. Unfortunately, I was not a huge fan of this. I really loved the writing. I was just not very attached to the characters, and I just found myself getting mad at the main character a lot because it really, I guess she just was in a stage of denial, and it really took her a long time to kind of get over what happened, and it took a while for the plot of this book to really get into motion, so I ended up giving this book only 3 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read is Prisoner of Night and Fog by Anne Blankman, and this book is historical fiction and it's set in World War II. It is about a girl named Gretchen, and her uncle is none other than Adolf Hitler, and she has grown up in the Nazi Party for basically her entire life, and then she meets this reporter named Daniel, and he kind of turns her view of the world on an upside down, and she starts to realize maybe Hitler isn't everything that he seems. I really enjoyed this book. I'm a huge fan of historical fiction. I thought the plot sounded good, and it was overall just a solid story. It had me interested. I was really interested to see what happened. I really liked some of the different historical elements thrown in. It was very historically accurate, and I ended up giving that book 4 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read is To All the Boys I've Loved Before by Jenny Han, and this book is about a girl named Lara Jean, and she has written a love letter to every boy that she has loved before, and she keeps them in a hat box under her bed until one day all of the letters have mysteriously been sent. And this book deals with family and life and love, and I just adored this book to high heaven. It was perfection. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. I just think that this is an amazing book. This is my favorite Jenny Han book that I've read by far. And I actually read this book from my new book club called Bookbusters, and I'll link the video announcing that down below. But basically, we are going to be having a live show discussing this book on June 7th, I believe. That's Saturday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time on 2BookTeens channel. So if you want to talk about this book, then come and join us. The next book that I read was Museum of Intangible Things by Wendy Wonder, and this book is the story of 2 girls who are basically just stuck in a dead-end town, and one of the main characters is a girl named Zoe, and she has a severe case of bipolar disorder, and before she gets kind of shipped away to a mental hospital, she and her best friend decide to go on a road trip. I had a lot of really mixed feelings about this book. I felt like the plot wasn't very interesting, but a lot of the emotional issues that were brought up were really solid, and I felt like the book taught a lot of important lessons. However, I will warn you that this book is a little bit, I guess it could be a little triggering, because it does focus on bipolar depression, which is a very serious illness, and the character Zoe has a very, very severe case of it. And sometimes it did make me a little uncomfortable, and it was very hard to read about. So I ended up giving this book 3 out of 5 stars. It was decent. It was just not really what I was expecting from the summary that was on the dust jacket of the book. The next book that I read was Side Effects May Vary by Julie Murphy, and this book is about a girl named Alice, and she is diagnosed with leukemia. And when she's diagnosed with this disease, she makes a bucket list, but it's not your typical bucket list. It includes ruining people's lives. And then a couple months later, she realizes that she's in remission, and she kind of has to deal with everything that she has done. I read this book also for a read-along and a live show. I will link the live show down below, and I was not a huge fan of this book. The main character really grated on me, and I just was not very attached to the story, and I just was not overall a huge fan of this book. I ended up only giving it a 2 out of 5 stars. Not one of my favorites. The next book that I read is What I Thought Was True by Huntley Fitzpatrick. Huntley Fitzpatrick wrote My Life Next Door, which everyone loves. And what I Thought Was True is about a girl named Gwen. And she comes from a family of workers that work on an island. I'm assuming, can't remember where, but it's kind of somewhere in like the Northeast. It's basically like an island where rich people go for the summer. And she comes from a family of workers, and she ends up kind of in this complicated relationship with this guy named Cassidy, and he's a rich guy. And this book kind of follows Gwen's kind of journey throughout the summer. I had very high hopes for this book. However, my expectations were not met. I gave this book a 2 out of 5 stars. I was not impressed with the story, and what bugged me above all else about this book was the writing. Oh my gosh. I am pretty picky, I'd like to say, about writing, but this book, it just made me want to go and take a pen and just write in it. It was just so many run-on sentences, and I find that I really have a hard time enjoying a book when I have a huge problem with the grammar. Next, I read The Importance of Being Earnest by Oscar Wilde, and I read this for English class. I ended up giving this 3 out of 5 stars. The Importance of Being Earnest is basically a story of mistaken identity, and it's very funny. However, I liked it. I just thought it was a little too silly for my taste, but I know a lot of other people really liked it. The next book that I read was actually an advanced reader's copy, and I got it from Harper Teen on Edelweiss, and that is The Murder Complex by Lindsay Cummings. And I have been anticipating this book for God knows how long, and it is about this society where the murder rate is higher than the birth rate. And there are 2 main characters. The first one is Meadow, and she's kind of been brought up her whole life to be this really tough girl, and she kind of sets out to like defeat the establishment. And then there's a guy named Zephyr, who's basically a poor orphan who is kind of wrapped up in this in a way that you don't expect. Now, I had very high expectations for this book, and I thought it was okay. I absolutely adore Lindsay Cummings. I think she's a great author and a great person. However, this book, I just felt like there wasn't that spark. For me, for books I really love, there's something that draws me in, something that makes me love a book. And I felt like this book just didn't have it for me. I really enjoyed the story. I liked the characters. It just did not really drag me in. And I don't know if it was because I was in a reading slump, but I ended up giving this book 3 out of 5 stars. I liked it, but I didn't love it. The next book that I read was Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. I had to read this for class, and oh my god. Not a fan of this. I'm not usually a huge fan of books I read in English class, and this one, I feel like everyone knows the story. It was just so boring. I really liked Mary Shelley's writing style, but the rest of the story was just boring. I even read Spark Notes for some of these chapters. Do not tell my English teacher. I gave this 2 out of 5 stars. Not a fan. The next book that I read is Since You've Been Gone by Morgan Matson, and this is Morgan Matson's 3rd book, and it is about a girl named Emily, and she has always lived in the shadow of her best friend Sloane until one summer Sloane disappears, and she leaves Emily a list of things to do, including going apple picking at night, kissing a stranger, and even going skinny dipping. And I love this book. It was the perfect blend of a fluffy contemporary, yet it still had some emotional aspects to it, and it had a really good romance as well. It was not insta-love, and I give this book 5 out of 5 stars. If you're looking for a solid summer contemporary, then that is the book that I would recommend to you. And the last contemporary that I read this month, I read a lot of contemporary this month, is Love Letters to the Dead by Ava DeLara. And I know that everyone and their mother has been raving about this lately, but this book deserves all of its hype. It is about a girl named Laurel, and she gets an assignment in school to write a letter to a dead person. But she doesn't pick the usual president or movie star. She picks people who have died young and tragically, including Kurt Cobain, Amelia Earhart, Janis Joplin. And Laurel recently lost her sister, and kind of through these letters she learns how to deal with her grief. And I thought that this book was just so beautifully written. It was a beautiful story, and I felt like I could really relate to it. So I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. It's definitely one of the best books that I have read so far this year. And the last book that I read this month was a reread, and that is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. I had to read this for my term paper, and I cannot say enough good things about this book. This is my new, basically, favorite book. It is my baby. This is my new favorite classic, and I cry every time I read this. I cried no short of 5 times while reading this. But yeah, I really love this book. It's my new favorite classic, and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. As for my June TBR, I don't really have a lot set yet. I am in school until like June 20th, which sucks. So I don't really know when I'm going to have a lot of time to read. Some possible choices on my TBR are: I may choose to reread Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo and finish the rest of this series. Or I could read the rest of the Demon King series by Cinda Williams-Shima. Like I said, my TBR is kind of up in the air. The only book that I know I'm reading for sure next month is City of Heavenly Fire by Cassandra Clare, the last book in the Mortal Instruments series. And next month I also have a lot of review copies of books to read, so we will see about that. So let me know in the comments down below if you've read any of these books or if you want to see reviews. I was really thinking about doing a review on the Murder Complex, so if you want to see that, then let me know in the comments down below. So thank you guys for watching. Be sure to subscribe to my channel, and I will talk to you again soon.